Today we're going to be looking at Arctic Fox in the color Space Cowgirl. And this is actually their newest color that they released. Now I did notice it is a neon green, but it doesn't say anywhere on the packaging that it is UV reactive. There is a possibility that it says on the listing on the website. I didn't look. So I did want to just try that out with you guys really quickly. So this is my swatches when I was trying to see the color. And I have my little UV flashlight. Yeah, that's definitely UV reactive. And I will definitely use the UV light on the hair later on in the video. So stay tuned for that if you're curious what that looks like. So before we get too far into this, I do want to mention that the swatches are human hair swatches, but the only one that is virgin hair is the number 4 black swatch. The rest have been chemically colored or bleached at some point in their existences. Also, the numbers are not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and stuff throughout the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch color. One is pink. Traditionally, green and red are across from each other on the color wheel, and since this is a lighter green, I kind of wanted to see if it could cover any of the pink. 2 is gray, 3 is a natural red, 4 again is black, so 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then number 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So I'll be taking the dye directly from the container and I'll be putting it at the top of each swatch. And I know some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will do a diluted version on the bottom of each swatch as well. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus, different screens and monitors can make colors look different, especially undertones. So please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're gonna do a 1:2 ratio. So 1 part of the dye to 2 parts diluter. Firstly, if you are unsure about what diluter is, I like to just give a really simple, easy answer that it is something that kind of lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. Usually each brand will sell their own mixing medium that is clear or white that you can mix with your color. But to keep things fair, essentially, I like to just use a plain white conditioner for diluting. Also, I'm not really sure what this is going to turn out like. I started with an equal part ratio, but it didn't really look too different on my paper towel from the direct dye. So I put another part of the diluter in, and that one did look a little bit lighter, but I know the way that hair takes it can be different. So I guess we'll see, but I am warning you right now that I don't know how well it will take because it is pretty light and kind of pastel. Okay, so I really want these to have a chance to really absorb the color, so I'm gonna let them sit for 3 hours. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I'll meet you back here. I'm actually kind of surprised that you can even see it on like the number 7 swatch. It's such a lighter, not necessarily pastel, but still very light color. I really wasn't expecting much on the darker swatches. Now, I don't see anything on 4 and 5. I do see a slight tint on the top of number 6 and number 7. But I do like to give a warning, if you have anything darker than a platinum blonde, your results could definitely vary. And even if you have a hair color like 7 or 8 and this dye colors your hair, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay in your hair, especially if your hair is virgin. Just a warning. So the number 1 was originally pink. The top doesn't necessarily look pink anymore, but I don't know if it necessarily covered, because I do see some strands of pink peeking through. And then on the diluted section, it actually looks quite patchy, which I think is due to it being a pink underneath and not being dark enough to cover the pink, because I don't really see any patchiness on the lighter swatches, which of course it could be my application. That is always a possibility. But I do notice patchiness usually when a dye is not pigmented enough to cover. And I think that's what's happening here on the bottom of number 1. Number 2 was gray, and that definitely affected the undertone. To me, it has a much more cool toned look to it versus like the 10 and 11 and 12, or even like the 9. These all have an almost yellowy green look, and you can still see some of the yellow in the number 2's green, but it does lean just a little bit closer to a true green. Number 3 is similar to the browns, except I think the red undertone did have an effect where you can't see the green as well. So overall, I think it looks the best on the platinum blonde number 11 swatch. If you're not going for a super neon look, I think it does look pretty on like the 9, 10, and 12 as well. It's just a slightly different end look. So of course I want to do comparisons, and I actually only have 2 neon green dyes that I've done previously, so those are the 2 I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start with the one that looks the least similar, which is gonna be Iroiro in the color neon green. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, and number 10. So the Iroiro definitely is not quite as bright on its own, and definitely not as yellow leaning. If you're looking for a neon green that is closer to a true green, this would be much more accurate. I feel like in comparison to the Space Cowgirl, this neon green doesn't look as neon, but they both do glow under a black light, so it's really just preference on what you're looking for. But regardless, undertones are pretty far off from each other. And also I think the neon green from Iroiro does look a touch darker. My other neon green that I've done that is much more similar is Manic in the color Electric Lizard. This is comparable to number 12, 11, and number 10. I know sometimes my camera doesn't pick up minute differences, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see what I see, but the Electric Lizard from Manic actually does look a little bit more neon in comparison. Again, they both glow under a black light, so in that way they are both neon, but the Space Cowgirl looks just a little bit more muted, just a touch. So I put a piece of paper down so hopefully the diluted sections are a little less distracting. It honestly seems like the other 2 swatches, so the 12 and 10, don't really look that far off from each other though. It only seems to have the biggest difference on the platinum blonde. So for undertone, they seem to be very, very similar, and it's really just that the Space Cowgirl is just not quite as bright than the Electric Lizard. All right, I think it's time that we look at these under a black light. So let's do that. So I did figure out that if I have a black background, it is a little bit easier to see the UV light. So I turned my lamp off and I've got my UV light ready. So it seems like the only one that doesn't glow with this dye is the number 4 black swatch, which makes sense because it probably didn't really take any of the dye anyways. Even the ones like number 5 where I couldn't see a difference definitely are glowing, which is really cool. And it seems like the lighter the hair gets, the less you can tell the difference between the diluted section and the direct dye section under the UV light. And while the brown swatches do glow, it just seems to not be quite as bright as the blonder swatches, which of course makes sense as well. Now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything after that point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. Because I do use natural lighting, the lighting environment between days can change, so if the before and after swatches look kind of off from each other, that is why. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out, but just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.